Welcome to the NAIOP Southern Nevada February Breakfast Program. I am Reed Gottesman, and I have the privilege of serving as your president this calendar year. Hi, Ariba. Good morning to everyone in attendance here at the fabulous Orleans Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada, and also to everyone who's joined us by Zoom. I'm going to take a moment and talk to you guys about something called the NAIOP Chapter Leadership and Legislative Retreat. A couple weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to attend, and I had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. on this trip that we call CLLR. It was a pretty outstanding experience. I got to bond with 11 of our chapter leaders in our nation's capital. And there are lots of stories to be told, but for the sake of our breakfast program, I'm going to keep this very brief. The quick synopsis is that we had the chance to spend time with leaders from NAIOP from all corners of our country. We attended breakout sessions and programs at the retreat where we learned best practices in membership and government affairs. And based on our programs, I think all of the other chapters in the country can take lessons from us. And we met with our elected officials in their offices at the Capitol and talked to them about the most important issues facing our industry today. A couple of meetings that felt particularly productive to me were the breakfast meeting with Congressman Mark Amodei from Northern Nevada and the small group meeting with Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. It was a really productive time. One of the cool things they do at CLLR is they give out chapter merit awards. I could tell everyone here that between the powerful group that we trotted out to Washington, D.C. and the large group that Northern Nevada chapter traveled with, it really felt like the little state of Nevada was really dominant here, and that was very cool. And though we're a small state, we punch way above our weight class. And because of this, NAIOP Southern Nevada won NAIOP Large Chapter of the Year, and that's no small feat. And yeah, why not? And that wasn't all that we won. In all, we won 4 chapter merit awards. As I said, Large Chapter of the Year. We won for membership. We won for outstanding leadership by a chapter president, and that's for Chaim Mizrahi. So great job by Chaim last year. And Chapter Volunteer of the Year, Steve Niger, and this was definitely earned. Big cheers for Steve. And really, it's because of the contributions in everyone in this room that our chapter is so successful. So it just shows, we were rewarded for doing just a great job with this organization. All right, let's take a moment to honor our President's Circle sponsors. They're a critical component to the success of our NAIOP chapter. We'll start with our platinum sponsors. Special thanks to Cox Business, and they're a platinum sponsor and have supported NAIOP for 19 years. And Schnitzer Properties has stepped up to the ranks of platinum sponsor as well. We also want to thank our gold sponsors, Kimley Horn and Associates, Spotlight 2022 Engineering Firm of the Year, Majestic Realty Company, whose leader, Rod Martin, is a Spotlight Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, Nevada General Construction, Panettone Development Company, which they were the 2022 Spotlight Development Firm of the Year, Prologis, and the Southern Nevada Water Authority, which once again I want to commend our friends at the SNWA for the difficult work they've been doing to safeguard the future of our community. And now take a look at the screen as we recognize our silver sponsors. All right, and our bronze sponsors. And thank you to our copper sponsors as well. And lots of you should probably be on these screens, so if you're thinking about becoming a President's Circle sponsor, stop thinking and just do it. You'll get out of it so much more than you think. Take action and make it happen. Speak to Jana, speak to me, speak to Katrina, speak to Lisa Brady, who among other things is our sponsorship chair. lots of options on who to speak to, so just make it happen. All right, do we have our committee announcements ready? Why don't you guys step up? The volunteers on our committees are what makes this organization so special, so let's take a moment, see what they have going on. Got a great group here. Chase, why don't you start us out?
Everyone, I'm Chase with Colliers. With Logic this year, we're Team NAIOP's team captains for the Make-A-Wish Walk on April 29th.
We did a great job last year raising about $15,000, led by Sabrina and Patty. They've done a really good job over the past years to make it an important and impactful event for NAIOP. This year we're planning on a goal of $20,000, and if we accomplish that, that would give us an opportunity to grant not one but two wishes for two separate kids, which would be really great for not only our committee but the chapter as a whole. There is a QR code up here. You can donate through that, and then we'll also be posting on our social media platforms up until the walk. So, thanks.
Hi everyone, Gaetana Cafasa with Burke Construction Group and co-chair of the NAIOP Spotlight Awards. So we are just about 6 weeks out. It is Saturday, March 25th at Red Rock Resort. Merit Award winners were announced, so if you have not secured a sponsorship yet, we do have some left. Be sure to check out the website. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Micah with Nevada General Construction here with the membership committee. We've got a lot of social events and mixers coming up this year. First one will be March 2nd, coming up in just a few weeks at Jing, downtown Summerlin. Registration's open. We also have a sponsorship opportunity for that and any of our events through the rest of the year. We've got $500 sponsorships and $1,000 sponsorships coming up. If you have questions about that, please come talk to me. After that, save the date for our May 31st Aviators game, annual Aviators game on the third base deck. We are securing a full buyout possibly this year, so keep that in mind. Everybody planned to be there. Last year was great attendance. It's always a really, really good time. And then August 3rd, the bowling tournament this year. Last year we had a great turnout, bought out the entire place. I think over 300 people. We're expecting the same this year. Great event, benefits the Community Service Committee as well. We have a big raffle. Last year we raised thousands of dollars that goes to our holiday events and buying turkeys for families and things like that. So keep those events in mind. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Guy Gugino with Union Bank, and I'm here for the golf committee. We are playing on May 4th at Paiute Golf Resort. We have some sponsorships open. We have two types of sponsorships basically left. We have tea sponsors, so we have standard teas and alcohol teas available, and we also have giveaway items. The reason I break those down is the giveaway item sponsorships need to be in very quickly because we need to order the logo items for the players. If you have questions, you can reach out to me, anyone on the committee. Of course, Jonna runs everything. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, this is a time when we like to take a moment and recognize our new members. If you're a new member, please stand. All right, we've got a few. Everyone remember the first time you walked into this room and it was kind of intimidating with all these people here? So pay it forward, say hi to these people, make them feel comfortable. All right, membership. We're doing really great, but we need to keep pushing. We've grown since last month, and NAIOP Southern Nevada is currently 673 members strong. And as we never get tired of saying, we rank in the top 10 for NAIOP chapters nationally. Owen Sherwood is our membership chairperson, and he's doing a great job. So if you'd like to find out more about membership, just say hello to Owen, and he'll help you out. All right, here's where we take a moment to recognize our 2023 breakfast meeting sponsors. Everyone in the industry knows that the third Thursday of each month, NAIOP breakfast at the fabulous Orleans Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada is the place to be. And these 9 companies are critical to our success. We've got Affordable Concepts, Carpenter Sellers Delgado Architects, Cox Business, Dermody Properties, Martin Harris Construction, NV Energy, Schnitzer Properties, Southern Nevada Water Authority, and SR Construction. Thank you to each and every one of those companies. Yeah, big round of applause. All right. All right, and we have a sponsor today for the breakfast. Special thanks to this morning's meeting sponsor, Gensler. Gensler has been a member of the chapter since 2018. Gensler is a global architecture, design, and planning firm with 53 locations and more than 7,000 professionals networked across the Americas, Europe, Greater China, Asia Pacific, and Middle East. The Las Vegas office has been active locally for over 35 years and led by Principal Brett Robillard. Brett has more than 28 years of experience in a broad range of market sectors, including entertainment, hospitality, commercial office buildings, sports facilities, and residential projects throughout the U.S. and Asia. Is Brett here? Come on up to the stage. Quick. Yeah. Very quick.
Hi, everyone. We're happy to be here. Thanks, Reed. He covered most of the stuff I was going to, so I'll hit it on the fly. Shot out of a cannon here at 9 or at 7:30 a.m. One thing I just thought I'd mention is I think it takes everyone in this room to bring forward what the future of Las Vegas and our valley is to see. I'm thrilled to be living here in Las Vegas for now 15 years. And I think some of the cards on your table really espouse our ethos, which is building in a sensitive, delicate, and beautiful, austere environment, the desert of Las Vegas, fueled with the wildness of Las Vegas, which is, I think, why many of us are here. And that nexus between the two is where we find a lot of the opportunities and inspiration for our work. And I'm just happy to be here with our collective. So hope we all have a great discussion. Thanks.
Hey, Brett, when did you move here?
2006.
Nice. Been here a while. He's been through it. All right. Each month at the breakfast program, we decided that we want to recognize the contributions that an individual NAIOP member has made or is currently making to our chapter. In January, we recognized Sean Donosky of DC Building Group. And this month, we're recognizing someone who has worn many, many hats at NAIOP. Please hold your applause for a moment, but I'm thrilled today to recognize the one, the only, Jennifer Turchin, Coda Group. Hold the applause, hold the applause. All right, so Jennifer did not know it, but she changed my life when she decided to join NAIOP on October 30th of 2008. Jen has been contributing for 15 and a half years to our organization. She is an extremely valuable member of the DLI class of 2010, and many say the class of 2010 is the finest DLI class of all time. Jen was on the winning DLI team, which just happened to be my team also. And to all you current DLIs that are here, this is serious business. We still have bragging rights after a decade and a half. And Jen has been super active in committees over the years. In particular, she's been a big contributor to our DLI program and has chaired the committee. She's currently chairing the Education Committee and is doing a fantastic job. She is a sustainable development guru and one of the biggest resources in the market. Jen served on the NAIOP Board of Directors from 2017 to 2020. She's been a speaker at the NAIOP Breakfast and an instructor for a DLI class. She's won numerous Spotlight Awards, 2013 Developing Leader of the Year, 2016 Associate Member, 2017 Architecture Firm of the Year. Jen has also never met a triathlon that she hasn't conquered. Ladies and gentlemen, how about a big round of applause for one of the fiercest people I know, Jennifer Turchin. Right on. Okay, it's time to get to why we're all here today, and we'll segue into the program. As everyone knows, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. There's paper and pens on each table. Write down your questions, and our committee members will retrieve them from each table. For those participating virtually, the Zoom Q&A will be monitored, and we look forward to your questions. Q&A will start at 9 o'clock, and today's program concludes at 9:15. You could set your watch to it. Let's get to the main event. Our moderator today is Jamie Thalgott. Jamie is a shareholder at Brownstein, Hyatt, Farber, Schreck, where she provides counsel to high-profile developers. But Jamie is one of those people with a really cool bio, and it's almost a shame to condense it down, but I'll try to hit the highlights. Jamie's family first came to Vegas in the 1960s when her grandfather took an assistant director position at the nuclear test site. Very cool. She attended the Meadows School, graduated undergrad from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Our nation's capital is a little bit of a theme today. She interned on the Capitol. She studied in Spain. She earned her law degree in Tennessee from Vanderbilt University. And this is just the condensed version of her bio. So let's just say that Jamie is extremely qualified to moderate this panel today. So with no further ado, Jamie, welcome, and please come on up to the stage.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I was honored to be asked to come here today to facilitate a conversation about the investment sales market and our debt markets in the commercial real estate industry. I think you probably don't see too many attorneys up here moderating or on panels for market updates, just because we sort of sit in an interesting position. We are involved and we feel the effects of the workflow and that it passes our desk, but we're not always involved on the front end to really understand the underwriting process and all of the factors that go into actually having the deal reach that point to where we're papering it and helping to bring it to fruition. So hopefully that puts me in a good place to ask questions, and the programs committee has done an excellent job picking a panel that will be able to answer them quite well. So I'm sure you know most of our panelists, if not all of them, but I did want to just take a quick minute to honor them and to provide a little bit of background on each of them, like Reed so kindly just did for me. First, we have Marlene Fujita. Marlene was recruited as an executive director to Cushman Wakefield's Las Vegas office in 2019 after previously spending 19 years at CBRE as a senior vice president of capital markets, investment properties, Las Vegas. As an executive director of Nevada Investment Properties Capital Markets, Marlene focuses primarily on the acquisition and disposition of income-producing properties valued at more than $1 million. Since January of 2010, Marlene has completed more than 130 dispositions in the Las Vegas area. So welcome to Marlene. Next, we have Deana Marcello. Deana is a third-generation real estate professional and a recognized leader in the commercial real estate industry. Deana is a 23-year resident of Las Vegas who brings over 13 years of experience specializing in commercial real estate, investment, and owner-user sales, as well as representation for national retail tenants and institutional landlords. Deana serves as an executive vice president at Colliers, where she focuses on the stabilization and disposition of assets and implementing strategic planning to maximize value for her clients. And we were in the same DLI class, so I had to mention that. We were not on the same team, but we are today, so welcome, Deana. And last but certainly not least, Robert Bob Ybarra. Bob joined the CBRE Capital Markets Phoenix operation in May of 1998 and brings more than 24 years of experience in producing in excess of $30 billion in debt and equity transactions with various lenders. Bob has been instrumental in working with clients on all of their commercial loan-related needs, including new loan originations, loan extensions, discounted payoffs, and amortization rescheduling. Bob's team is recognized as one of the top debt and structured finance production teams in the country. Welcome, Bob. All right, thank you to each of you for your participation. I'm really excited for our conversation today. I'm going to now move into my seat over here.
Slide it to the right.
Sorry, I didn't turn mine on.
Do you want me to do it?
I will just stay here for a minute. So I just wanted to kick everything off today by sort of offering my perspective and an example of where I have seen the market go over the last couple of years. Normally, you won't see an attorney stand up in front of a room of 150 brokers and talk about a specific client matter because of confidentiality and attorney-client privilege considerations. But in this case, the client was a governmental entity, and it was a pretty well-publicized matter, and the deal itself is public since it was a government entity, the LVCVA. So we sort of kicked off the deal pre-COVID. It lived through the shutdowns, resurfaced, and then was eventually inked at the end of 21. The deal was anticipated to close in mid-22, and then unfortunately, by the end of the year, as things had sort of shifted, it did not end up closing. And that deal was the sale of about 10 acres at the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Elvis Presley. The LVCVA and the developer were both very excited about the opportunity. And to avoid sharing any attorney-client information, I'm just going to sort of quote from the RJ article about what happened. Steve Hill, the CEO of LVCVA, said, "The land sale to the developer, Claudio Fisher, did not close on December 15th. As a result, the LVCVA terminated the agreement, received the $7 million deposit, and relisted the property." And then the developer offered a public reason for the sale falling through, claiming rising interest rates in the United States no longer allowed his planned resort to pencil out financially. He was discouraged by the Federal Reserve implementing 7 consecutive rate hikes that year. So that's sort of where I saw the market go by the end of 22, and I'd just like to kick things off by starting with Bob and asking if you could sort of give us your perspective on where the market sat a year ago today as compared to where we're at now.
Sure, happy to. Can you hear me okay? Everybody can hear me? Great. Well, I guess obviously we're in interesting times now, an inflationary environment, and the feds are doing everything they can to kind of squash that, right? And so as a result, you're seeing the Fed funds rate tick up, and they anticipate additional bumps to the Fed funds rates over the next couple of meetings. So we're going to have some more pain, unfortunately. So I think it's good to understand that, you know, where we're at today compared to where we were at last year at this time, because it is contrastingly different. I'm going to talk about really 2 indexes. I don't want to get too granular, but I think it's just a good base for which to start. And I'm going to talk about fixed rate money and floating rate money. Both of the indexes have increased substantially. As far as the 10-year Treasury, which is typically what borrowers look for to hold long term in terms of a long-term hold, that's what lenders typically go towards or look to size or price deals. And so the 10-year Treasury, and I've got my notes, so I'm going to try not to look at them, but a lot of numbers here. Last year at this time was at just a hair over 2%. Today we're at 3.80%. So it's a 180 basis point increase just on the Treasury alone, which obviously is substantial and it impacts values overall that we'll get into later. But I think you got to have a little bit of perspective when it comes to that Treasury figure, because when you look historically at Treasuries, I mean, in the 80s they were as high as 15%. In the early 80s with inflation. Historically speaking, last 60 years, it's just, on average, it's a hair under 6% in terms of the index itself. So a 380 Treasury is not a bad Treasury when you look at it. It's just a bad Treasury when you look at it over the context of the last 2 years, where the Treasury was considerably lower. In fact, it floored out at about 50 basis points during COVID. So we are substantially higher since COVID. That's the fixed rate index that people commonly turn to for pricing. The floating rate index is SOFR, which has now taken the place of LIBOR. Well, a year ago today, SOFR was at 0.05%, essentially zero. Now, last I checked, and that's on the run, so that means it's always moving, it is at 4.56%. So 4.5% difference, 450 basis points higher than where we were a year ago. What does that mean overall in terms of interest rates for us? Well, on the 10-year money, just coming off of the MBA, I spent 3 days in San Diego, met with probably 30 or 40 different lending sources, primarily on-book sources, life insurance companies. Today's pricing for traditional real estate, your 4 major food groups, is anywhere between 170 and 200 basis points over the Treasury. So interest rates today are in the 5.5% to 6% range, plus or minus. When you look historically, I looked within CBRE's system of all the loans that we've closed over the country. This is the company corporate. On average, the 10-year fixed rate loans that we closed this time last year was in the low threes on average in terms of fixed interest rates. The year before, also in the low threes, coincidentally, in 2021, at this time in 21. The most competitive occurred during the heart of COVID, where the Treasury was down in the 50 basis point range, where we were able to secure, this was the most competitive pricing I was able to secure in my lifetime, which was a 20-year fixed rate deal on an industrial portfolio that priced at 2.13% on the coupon. Wow. So that is basically 150 basis points, 170 basis points below what the federal government is borrowing today, right? So a significant shift relative to overall cost of capital. That's on the fixed side. On the floating side, we do a lot of construction at our shop, industrial and multifamily, and you're seeing pricing very similar to what we saw during the last few years of 250 to call it 375 over. But when you go and look at where the index is, well, 250 to 350 over last year was 255 to 355 in terms of overall interest rates. Now you're looking at starting at around 7%, up to 8.5%. And that's going to continue to rise because the SOFR, and we'll get into it and what we anticipate in the future, but you're going to look at another, call it 50 to 75 basis point potential increase in that index, at least through the end of the, end of the year.
Thank you so much for that context. I think just to sort of now crystallize that into the real world and how we're seeing it play out in the market locally, Deana, could you kind of explain how you're seeing those rates affect your clients and what your clients are looking for in terms of investment sale opportunities now as compared to a year ago?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that's really changed outside of interest rates and cap rates is number of total transaction volume. So across all asset classes, the total number of actual transactions has gone down. So about 13% nationwide, specifically in the retail sector, about 10.9% nationwide. So I think what that tells us is there's just a lot less buyers, forced buyers out there purchasing property. And then also on the seller side, there's a lot less forced sellers. And I think part of that is the decline in 1031 exchange transactions that have happened over the last 12 months or so. How the interest rates apply to specifically to retail and the single tenant net lease sector, I have a couple of examples. So we did sell a BJ's in Q4 of 22, and that was at a 4.75. We sold an Olive Garden Q1 of this year at a 4.75. And the reason I touch on those single tenant net lease assets is you just heard Bob say lending is between a 5.5% to a 6% interest rate. So typically these single tenant net lease products are acquired cash, and the debt market doesn't really influence these smaller single tenant net lease products as much as you would think. So you see these tremendous rise in interest rates, but it's not really applying to cap rates. In the multi-tenant sector, if we want to shift gears off to that, typically the transaction pricing is a lot higher. So there will be a requirement for debt, there will be borrowing costs. Last year we sold a deal over on Lake Mead in the 95 Rock Springs Plaza, which is a 40,000 square foot multi-tenant retail center anchored by a Chipotle and a Panera Bread. And that's traded at a 5.6 cap. Today, that would probably trade a little bit over a 6. But what I do think is that amongst the retail sector, it's one of the only asset classes that you can still borrow and get a little bit of a spread. Some of the other asset classes just aren't there yet if you're lending at a 7% interest rate, and cap rates really haven't gotten there quite yet. I would also say that there's still a flight to quality on well-located assets, and the buyer pool is just shrunk down without the need for a lot of 1031 exchange transactions. But that's what we're seeing in retail.
It's part of the issue with, oh geez.
You're good.
Now you can hear me. Okay, sorry. I can hear myself. Part part of the issue with, I mean, yeah, there are cash buyers out there, especially in that like 4 to 5 million range or 2 to 5 million range. However, if from our experience, investors still say, well, interest rates are here, even if I'm paying cash, right? So it's still in their minds. They feel like they're overpaying in some sense. I think it depends on the product that you want. During COVID, we found a lot of investors that did not want to deal with multi-tenant anymore. So that drove interest on the single tenant side, right? Going to work with 40 different tenants and having to renegotiate leases or amend leases with COVID provisions and giving free rent was a real drag, especially if it's triple net leased and you're just collecting a check, you've got a third party manager, now you're having to make decisions. So interesting times, but we're seeing it on the single tenant side as well, just a little bit of a bump.
Yeah, and I think Deana mentioned, as assets are performing well, it's not forcing sellers to sell, and it's keeping prices high enough to where, there's aren't as many sale opportunities in the market. Are you seeing the same thing in the office space? Because I know you have a lot of office site experience, or what are you kind of seeing in the office market now?
We've seen a slowdown for sure as far as the buyer pool, and I think that likely goes across all classes, maybe not industrial so much, the darling child. But certainly a slowdown. There are concerns. There are concerns about what that office tenant looks like, the makeup of it, and we all work in offices, right? And so it has certainly changed. Also, the work from home thought process that has been implemented, I'm sure, in every single office that we all go to 3 times a week at least. So certainly changes. Tenants are extending their lease for shorter terms. Prior, maybe about a year ago, a lot of our office leasing folks were saying they were getting early renewals because of the concern from the tenant about lack of space out in the market. And rates were a little bit lower, so that was pushing decisions to be made in advance. Landlords today are saying, I've got a roll in 2024, maybe it's a full floor tenant. I don't want to poke the bear. Like, I don't want to touch that hot potato. If I'm getting the income today, I'll let it ride out, and then we can address it maybe 6 months in advance of that termination or expiration.
Interesting. Deana, and on the leasing side of things, are you seeing sort of similar activity, or how has leasing changed over the last year?
There's still a really strong demand for retail leasing, and specifically in the QSR market. So anything that's drive-through oriented, that's still highly desirable. Lots of new concepts that have come into town, like Salad and Go. That's an interesting one. That it's a 800 square foot drive-through that sells salad and wraps and breakfast. So, I think that there's definitely still a demand for that type of retail. On the investment side of things, I've seen investors shift now to really seeking grocery-anchored retail assets. And, I would say probably the change in cap rates over the last 12 months is probably somewhere between 40 to about 90 basis points in terms of increase in cap rates. And on the single tenant side, it would probably be about 20 to 40 basis points. But activity on the leasing side, in my perspective, has been still strong.
On the investment side as well, with grocery, we had so many investors that we met with that did not want to touch grocery.
Yes, that's true.
Right, because there was this major shift. Plated came out, Green Chef came out, and so there was a lot of competition, and now it seems to be more in favor again.
Yeah, pre-COVID for sure. It was, no, I don't want anything grocery anchored. Then COVID happened and you actually had to go to the grocery store to get your groceries. And then they're like, wait, people still need daily needs. People still need to get that instant item, whether it's chicken for your family or diapers or eggs for $12.99, anything that you need to go. So
that's right, and only one dozen, by the way.
Just the one dozen.
Yeah, I'm interested in the salad place. Where is this?
So, it is located on Craig and Bruce.
Okay.
We have it listed for sale. It's located. It's at a 5 cap, and it's on Craig and Bruce. It actually opened a couple of weeks ago. They have 13 locations that are under construction right now, and this was their first one open. So it's done really well, based out of Arizona originally.
Those types of concepts, that shift from new concepts coming in, has played a major role in transactions. Our team listed a former Chase Bank about a year ago. We priced it at $47 per square foot on land value. It was like 1.25 acres. I think we had 27 offers on it, assuming that the Chase would be demoed. We sold it for $87, Alex, per square foot? $83 per square foot, almost double the price that we were asking. And again, we had pages of offers.
Yeah. Wow. So it sounds like there are sort of preferred assets in the sales market. Bob, if I could switch back to you, what are you seeing on the lender side? Are there certain assets that are more favorable, or what are you seeing in terms of lender activity?
Sure. In terms of lenders, there's different, types of lenders, if you will. When I was in high school, I was pretty naive. I was the banks or the lenders, right? But that's certainly not the case in my world, where you obviously have your banks and your credit unions as doing the majority of the lending. You also have life insurance companies that are really competitive on the long-term fixed rate product. You have your commercial mortgage-backed securities, your CMBS. That's your investment banks, your Goldmans, your Deutsches, your JP Morgans, et cetera. You have the agencies, which we are a Fannie Mae DUS lender and a Freddie Mac seller servicer, which is primarily in the multifamily space. You've got your debt funds, which are primarily designed for your shorter-term bridge-type money. So there's an abundance of capital that's out there, ultimately. Now, having said that, the capital isn't as efficient as we'd like it to be. As an example, CMBS, they usually play a good role in the higher leverage space, long-term fixed-rate money, non-recourse. They're just not competitively priced as of yet. They are getting a little bit better, but late last year there was a blowout in terms of spreads because of alternative investments by way primarily bonds that they can go into. And we have starting to see that spread come down. So they're a little bit higher priced than the 5.5 to 6. They're more in the 6 to 6.5, something like that. And then not as flexible as, say, a bank or a life insurance company. As I'd indicated before, the life insurance companies are more competitively priced in the 170 to 200 over range. Best pricing today for them is going to be in the 135 over range, so low fives in terms of fixed rate product. So you have capital. Now the banks, on the other hand, the national banks were the first to really pull out of the market, especially during as this rumbling started to occur. The Feds kind of started looking at the national banks, the big money center banks, as the first to go in and make sure that they're well capitalized relative to deposits, because there could be defaults coming down the road. So they pulled out of the market first. Regional banks kind of took their place, and local banks took their place to continue to do construction lending. Now we're starting to see the regional banks kind of, it's their turn to get reviewed by the Feds. They are taking more of a step back as well. They're focused on existing relationships. They're focused on deposit relationships, and any new deal that they do, they're looking for some sort of deposit, as an example, anywhere between 5% of the loan amount to as high as 40% of the loan amount. So if you're requiring something like that, you might as well do it for cash, right? So there's equity, or there's plenty of capital out there. It's just not as efficient.
Got it. So in terms of what you're seeing in the capital stack, if you could explain what a capital stack means, but kind of how are you seeing the loans layer to be able to move forward to a sale?
Well, let's talk about, I guess, some of the things, the metrics that lenders look to lend, which are affecting your buyers now. There's 3 sizing metrics that typically lenders look towards. Loan to value, anybody who has a home, right, you've got to be within a certain loan to value. That's given. And we've never really had an issue with loan to value over the last number of years. Debt yield, which is basically a lender's way to determine what, if they were to collect or foreclose on the property, how long it would take for them to recoup their loss. The higher the debt yield in terms of a percentage, the better off you are. And debt service coverage ratios. It's your net operating income divided by your debt service. You need to make sure that you can cover it at a decent amount. Well, during the downturn where interest rates were really low, loan to value really wasn't an issue. Debt service coverage wasn't an issue because the interest rates were so low, the mortgage payment was low. It was the debt yield that was driving the pricing or the leverage. Now, it's not loan to value, it's not debt yield, it's debt service coverage ratios because the rates are so high, the mortgage payments are substantially higher, and that's resulting in a lot less capital that's available to acquire the retail property or the office property. You're limiting dollars. So what we could have had 65% leverage, 70% leverage in years past, you're now seeing it at 50, 55% leverage because of the debt coverage ratios. Well, what happens when you have an existing loan that may be coming due on a piece of real estate that you have to refinance? Well, there's some rescue capital that's out there. There's mezzanine financing, there's pref equity that can come in and fill what you call the capital stack. As an example, we were working on a construction loan that we just closed in December, multifamily construction loan. It actually started earlier in the year. We went under application. There was some changes to the number of units and it delayed us. During that delay, the interest rates increased. There was a 70% loan to cost, which was very common at that time. Dropped down to 60% because the new interest rate requirements, the banks were required to underwrite to a higher rate on the takeout, which impacted us. The borrower came to me and said, Bob, I don't have the liquidity to kind of bridge this gap. So we went out and brought in a pref equity provider to come in and fill that gap that they lost. In fact, we took it from a 60% levered deal now up to 80% on the capital stack. Now it's expensive to do so. You know, your mezz or pref equity, depending on the leverage and how high you go, will be in the high single digits to mid-teens in terms of overall rates.
Okay. Could you just explain for everyone, because I remember sitting in these sometimes and not always understanding the lingo, what pref equity, preferred equity means and what a mezzanine loan is, just really quickly so people have context?
Yeah, they're basically, in a way, a second loan against the property. Most lenders don't want seconds. So the way to do it and to structure it is to do a mezzanine or pref equity piece, which is really assigned against the partnership interest as opposed to the real estate itself. And they're very similar in terms of its structure. Pref equity is preferred. When I was talking with the bank who ultimately lent, we said, well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer mezzanine or do you prefer pref equity? Well, we prefer pref equity because we are able to show a 60% debt piece. If it's recognized as mezzanine, that's an additional debt piece that's going to be added to the capital stack. So by just simply changing the language of saying this same cost, it's not mezz, this is pref equity. Okay, so that you're okay within the loan to cost parameters that the feds are looking at to make sure you're adequately capitalized. In simplistic form.
Yes. Marlene and Deana, I mean, understanding that and sort of how capital is working in the market now, do you have any examples of deals and how that sort of played out in the last, I don't know, say 6 months?
On the office side, we had a deal. It was actually, I won't go into that. It was about 70,000 square feet of Class A office. And when we started marketing the property for sale, we received several offers, of course, and this was kind of during COVID, so there was concern about bodies, the physical occupancy. But talking with a couple of the buyers, we had one who had all cash, sold his business, was moving it to his money to Las Vegas, and he was talking about possibly getting a loan. And at the time, he said to us, if I can get a rate of 2.89, then I'll do it. Or no, of 2.75, then I'll do it. Well, the bank came back and said 2.89, 2.89%, 14 basis point difference. Now, that was a variable rate, right? So if he owned that today, he would be not very happy with me. I don't know why, but he would be pretty upset, right? Because he would be doubling his interest rate, so to speak, in a matter of like 14 months. So that's one example. If we took that property to market today, we traded it for about $24 million. I would sit at about 7 cap, a little below that. I'm assuming we'd be high sevens, closer to 8% interest rate, or cap rate rather, because of the interest rate rise. And typically on the investment side, you've got to have a gap, right, between the interest rate and the cap rate, or else you're going backwards. And it's about 150 to 200 basis points, depending on the asset.
Yeah, I would say to avoid negative leverage, we've just had to get a little bit creative with some of the deals that we have. So, for example, we have a Sportsman's Warehouse in La Cruces, New Mexico that we are selling right now. And really to bridge the gap between the seller's pricing and the buyer's pricing was to do a loan assumption. So there was debt on the property. The existing interest rate was at a 4.5 cap. And so they were able to work that through, and that's really the only reason we were able to get the deal done. I would say with retail assets with upcoming loan maturity, it's looking at the property for the investor and saying, okay, well, this is what you own. How can we get to the number that you want so you can be comfortable with transacting? And sometimes that means breaking up the property overall. Maybe you end up parceling out the grocery store, you sell off the shop space, you sell off maybe the Burger King or something on the pads, and you can compress some of those cap rates to help build to the value that you want to achieve. So I think because debt is expensive, you just have to get a little bit more creative on how you transact.
And are you seeing mostly just clients that you've had in the past, or is it sort of new buyers coming in the market, or how is the market shifting in terms of the people that you're seeing who are coming to purchase?
So let's be clear, the buyers out there, there's plenty of, as they say, dry powder on the sidelines. So there is tons of, everyone's just waiting for the opportunity. And I think, the last couple of quarters, as I mentioned earlier, transaction volume's gone down, but I think we're going to see later this year in Q3 and Q4 that's going to pick up. So buyers are still out there. They're not as motivated when the seller can't adjust to what the market pricing that they consider to be the market pricing to be, but there's still plenty of dry powder on the sidelines. So I think the buyers are there. They're just might not be in a 1031 exchange or something that's forcing them to have to purchase. Their cash is there and they're just waiting for the opportunity.
Got it. And Marlene, could you kind of describe given that on the buyer side and there is money sort of in the wings, what kind of conversations are you having with any sell side clients that you have about pricing and where the market's at?
Well, there are a lot of motivations for sellers, and it's not always to exchange into other real estate. COVID did help bring investors into the market looking for a different type of asset. I think that's where it really helped retail.
Yes.
Because you still have the triple nets, you're not losing on the expense side, and then retail tenants did so phenomenally well. They were very strong. Whereas on office, there was a big question, are they going to return back to work? Is a tenant coming back? They may have been paying, but there's still that uncertainty in your stomach when you don't see a tenant turn their lights on for a good year and a half. For the sellers that we've been working with, there are other motivations. They want to move into a different product class again. Maybe they own office, now they want industrial. They want that ease of tenant improvements. I don't want to spend $80 per square foot building out a space. I want to spend $10 per square foot building out a space. I don't want full service gross leases with CAM reconciliations. I want triple nets. So that's driving it. And then loans that are coming due that are maturing is certainly driving it. Instead of having to refinance, it's a matter of I'll take what I'm going to get today and then maybe cash out.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, bringing it back to the deal I mentioned in the beginning and how interest rates went up, my deal fell through. It sort of painted an unfortunate picture of the market. Where are we going from here? Do we see, I guess, starting with you, Bob, do you see sort of things starting to stabilize, or can you describe maybe the next 6 months in your expert opinion?
In my expert opinion,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, actually, when I sat down with the lenders this past week, I'd asked them where they thought the Treasury was headed and where they thought SOFR was headed. And by and large, well, it was such a wide gap. It ranged from, we're at 380 now, it ranged from 275 to 4.25, right? Okay, that helps, right? What CBRE's in-house research group believes is that by the end of the year, we're going to be somewhere around the 3% mark on the 10-year. Now, on the SOFR, that's a little different. When you look at the SOFR curve, we're not done yet in terms of raising of rates. As the Feds continue to do what they do, it's supposed to peak 5.25-ish. Now, again, during the summertime, that same peak was supposed to occur really essentially now at 4.25. So it's always wrong. So when you look at a forward curve and you see what you call a hairy chart, the hairy chart is where they think it's supposed to go at the time, and you can just see how wrong they have been. So at the end of the day, I think it's safe to say that at least on the shorter term indexes, you're going to stay high, and it's going to be higher, and unless you see some significant impact in the economy, it's going to stay elevated, and into 2024, you could potentially see it start coming down if inflation gets in check.
Okay. And so how do you see the retirement of LIBOR affecting things? I mean, do you see SOFR sort of matching up with that, or how has it been transitioning? Is it May of next year, or May of this year?
It's already really, for all intents and purposes, within the product that has been priced. It's already made that transition. We've been pricing over SOFR for the last couple of years now. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal relative to the overall shifting from LIBOR to SOFR at the end of the day.
Is it just SOFR, or are there other sort of?
Oh, there are hundreds of indexes out there. Those are the indexes that are the primary indexes that are quoted. There's a Maribor, there's a number of different indexes, but those are the two major.
Yeah, I've heard of a few of them, and is there, for my own benefit, is there some underwriting process to decide which gets applied, or was it sort of the market just decided SOFR?
No, that's a good question. The deal that we closed, the multifamily deal, we were given 3 options to close. Do we want SOFR, do we want prime, or do we want a Maribor? Well, we looked at the historical and where the curves were going. We ended up with a Maribor. It saved maybe 10 basis points overall, but it was still better, and it was better preferred than something like prime, which is pretty high today.
Okay, great. And then back to you guys and your market specialties. I mean, Deana, where do you see the next 6 months going for you based on where we're at now?
I think we're going to continue to see a slowdown in number of transactions, I would say, for the first 2 quarters of the year. I think that we're going to see that pick up in maybe Q3 or Q4. No one wants to go out and be the first guy to look like, or gal, to look like an idiot and make, investments with all this money that they have just waiting. So I think it's, we just got to see when that first person takes the step out and goes for it. But I think we're going to see some increases in Q3 and Q4 in terms of activity.
And I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what's interesting, Q3 comes around so fast, right?
Yeah.
So when you can kind of kick the can down the road a little bit, but I think that's what I've heard, at least from a lot of the people that I've been speaking with, is that during the summer it should even out a little bit, and then hopefully by Q3 it will kind of be the new norm, so to speak.
Yeah, great. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. I mean, do you guys have any final remarks for the group, or any deals or anything exciting you'd like to share?
I'd like to say that I think, with regards to, I'm part of a larger team that's located in Phoenix, San Francisco, Salt Lake, and Orange County. So I travel a lot, and I see all these different markets. I'm extremely bullish when it comes to Las Vegas, when it comes to the Las Vegas office specifically. Because I'm in LA, I'm in San Francisco, and I see what's going on. We're working on some of these larger office properties that are very difficult to finance. Vegas overall, in terms of its occupancy relative to office, and the new product that's being developed is being absorbed. I'm extremely bullish relative to the other markets that I see. And then we talked about the favorable product types. I totally agree with you. Obviously, multifamily and industrial are at the top, grocery-anchored retail, and then you've got office. Even though it has its issues, there are lenders out there for office. It needs to be the right asset, the right sponsor, the right leverage, et cetera. But it isn't as dry as I thought it would be, but it's going to just take that special deal.
How about you guys? Anything else? Closing remarks?
I think Vegas is in a great position. There's lots of great things still happening in our market, and I think F1 that just signed another, I think, 10 years, things like that are really bringing a lot of momentum to Las Vegas. And even the office market here along the 215 Beltway, where CBRE is, and now Colliers in the narrative, I mean, it feels good to be out there. It feels good to be back in the office, so I'm not too scared about that. And retail follows that. You know, we need retailers to service these office tenants, and so yeah, go Vegas.
Yeah, and I'm bullish as well. The work from home model has worked for a couple of years, and we're seeing some adjustments to that. I believe that as human beings, we want to be around people, and that we do better when we can share ideas. You know, our team just rolls our chairs together and we have a meeting right there in our little cube versus calling each other and getting voicemail or having a Teams call and looking at each other on the screen. So I think that that will have some continued adjustments. And of course, we're going to see some right sizing of office space as a result of that. But I know that a lot of employers want their employees to come back to work, so we'll see higher physical occupancy. You know, our market was typically about 60 to 70% physical occupancy if you kind of took a poll of maybe 10 office brokers. And there's a large office development here in town that's over 1 million square feet that tracks the parking cards to get in and out of the garage. And they're saying that they're at about 50% physical occupancy. So we're getting, you know, we're not too far below where we were. I mean, in some places, in some tenant suites, you can certainly see it. But there will be a leveling off there as well. I called a major airline the other day to change a ticket, and you can tell the difference, right, when somebody's in a call center versus when they're at home. And I heard the dog. And then I called the warranty company just a couple weeks ago, and I heard like a chicken or a rooster or a peacock. And so it works for so long, but then, you know, at the same time, it kind of leaves you as the customer with this thought of what is going on, right. You know, and did you get my social security number, yeah. Right, or whatever the case is, my PIN number. Bob and I are not good friends anymore because he's been delivering such horrible news. So I'm glad I made the jump. Same with Kyle Nagy, wherever he is out there.
I think I saw him somewhere.
But yeah, I think that we'll see some leveling off. And of course, the owner-user market is still strong as well. So just a little bit of a pivot there.
Yes, employers using all types of ways to make sure you're in the office. We have swipe cards, so I'm wondering if you're talking about where I work or logging into your computer. We'll see. But it is interesting, and I think those two markets too. I mean, there seems to be a demand for office with retail supporting, so there's amenities for workers to, you know, take advantage of during their breaks and make work a little bit nicer. So maybe we'll see some more of that in Valley Development. But thank you all so much for your time. It's really been great getting to know you through this process. And I think we'll turn it over to Dan, who...
You're not done yet, Jamie, but we have a couple questions from the audience. One for Deana and Marlene. If you have so much money to spend, why are people spending it in Vegas versus Phoenix or Salt Lake? Or is a restaurant or an office building an office building, is the general theme of the question.
I think the tax environment in Nevada is advantageous to other markets, and I think that a lot of other investors see the long-term growth. We're a relatively young city, and there's still a lot of momentum to be had for Las Vegas, so I think that's a major reason why a lot of investors are looking at Vegas. And we've also diversified coming off the Strip and just being like a gaming town. Our industrial sector is super strong, and so I think that allows people to see that we're actually a real city and we're growing outside of the Strip.
And the one positive that COVID did for our city and for our business is it did allow employees to leave Western states, one in particular, and you know, maybe rent an apartment here at a much lower cost of living, and therefore they can possibly work here. I know of one office tenant, about 30,000 square feet, which is large for our market. The CEO moved to Las Vegas, and is bringing with him a brand new employee base. at a much lower cost than he is paying in California. So it allowed for that migration to occur and people to understand that, yes, no, we're not all going out to the Strip every night and, you know, putting our, well, you don't put quarters in anymore. I don't know. You, whatever, you swipe. Yeah, no more, yeah, you swipe. So yeah, it opened everyone's eyes, or a lot of people's eyes. So it's opportunity for all of us.
Is California affecting the tenants and the investor both equally?
Yes, thank you, California. Yes, yeah.
Well, and you see it on the residential side too,
Yeah.
right, in a big way. So yes, and Emily was mentioning another tax that went into effect in LA County that is going to just keep adding on to the debt stack, using Bob's capital stack terminology, of any given household.
Bob, will you see any payment defaults over the next 12 months?
Well, you are starting to see defaults. You are starting to see, especially on the office side, the likes of Blackstone, Hines, they've given back properties. RXR gave 10% of their portfolio back in New York, back to the bank. Brookfield just defaulted on 2 large office towers in LA. So the wave is coming primarily with office, but with the other asset classes, you're seeing them to perform really quite well. And the lenders are really trying their best not to foreclose. They're working with their clients to see about extensions, cash in refinances, or some sort of a way to not have to foreclose. They're trying their darndest to do that. Likewise, I met with our investment sales group on the note side in San Francisco about a month ago. You can imagine how busy they are. About 70% of their portfolio is consisting of office paper, and so they're able to sell it at a pretty considerable discount. So there is a common theme that you think that's going to, a lot of rescue capital is going to be needed. I see it more so in the office space as opposed to the other spaces.
What about Southern Nevada, though?
In Southern Nevada, there could be some issues.
You know, when you look at the CMBS default, or the CMBS list of watch list and all that's coming up, the majority is multifamily and then retail. So it could, you know, but who knows what the stories are? It's hard to kind of qualify that, right?
Yeah,
because
that's a good point. When you bring that up, the need for multifamily and industrial, when they're on floating rate debt, in higher leverage that can be afforded to now, that's where the rescue capital is going to come into place with the mezz or pref equity that's going to step in. But that's a really good point in terms of the some of that floating rate money that's going to be coming up, where you would need some rescue capital, or it will force a sale.
We have a question talking about if 1031 money's a little soft right now, and that's probably softening some of the prices. Is that a fair statement?
Not necessarily. The inventory is low. So when I was mentioning earlier, there's a flight to quality, and actually the average per square foot retail sales has increased over the last couple of quarters. Not substantially. I think it was at like $243 a foot nationally, and now it's at $244. So, I mean, yes, the 1031 exchanges are slower. We're just seeing products sit a little bit longer because you have to wait for the right buyer. But I don't think it's necessarily affecting pricing that strongly.
And thank you for that, because the follow-up in the same question was, who's filling the buyer gap if the 1031s are a little less percentage of the buyers? Or is it just taking longer?
It's just taking a little bit longer. It's just sitting a little bit longer. But I mean, if you take a search right now on CoStar, LoopNet, and look at where Las Vegas assets are, I mean, there's not a ton of high-quality assets. So I think it's still a flight to quality. And sellers just have to be more patient to find the right buyer.
So what percentage, and you can both answer, of your business is 1031s?
I would say last year, probably like 90%.
Okay.
So I just think that's kind of like right now we're working with an office buyer Marlene touched on owner-user being very strong, and I believe for the office market, that's still pretty strong right now. We're working with a buyer looking out in Henderson, and they're not in a 1031 exchange. They're just tired of paying rent, and they want to own their own building. So I think that's one of the buyer motivations, is just getting to own on their own, so not necessarily a 1031.
Is it safe to say that in terms of the buyer pool that's out there, it's more private capital as opposed to institutional right now?
100% in our space. I haven't seen an institutional buyer in years. Although, like RCA reports that I think 20% of the sales last year were institutional. I'm not sure how they calculate that, because even when we sold Tivoli Village, that was a private investor, 1031 motivated. How do you, that's $200 million.
Bob, the question is, when does the debt or mezzanine partner exit in the transaction? When do they get paid back?
They typically like to be co-terminus with the existing first. So it depends on, like, if it's an agency execution and it's a 10-year deal, it could be in for 10 years. It's typically not that long. And that is the pref or mezz typically comes in for a period of 3 to 5, typical, but it could be as long as 10.
Deana, somebody's very mad they have to drive across town to go to a Salads and Go. Can you expand on that?
So sorry. Sorry.
Anonymous.
Anonymous. Well, there's quite a few.
I can go stand behind her if you want.
No, there's going to be plenty popping up. I think they have 13 under construction right now, so there'll be one by you soon.
Bob, another in the weeds question. Are relationships getting any preferred rates, existing relationships with banks? Or
yeah, I think they are. We're working on a construction loan right now for a preferred client where typically construction pricing is 250 to 350 over. We're sub 200 right now for the preferred client.
in the old term of banking, cash flow credit and what's the other C? Credibility?
Character, credibility, I think that's what you
Does
guys
character
said.
and credibility matter anymore?
Oh, absolutely. It always has, ever since the Great Recession, right? Where, you know, they're gonna make sure that, especially the banks, want to make sure that they have clean track records.
Jamie, do you have any other questions that you left?
I don't think so. Do you guys have any questions for each other?
When are you going to New York?
In about 1 hour.
Good deal. Well, say hi to my daughter for me.
I will. Small city. Just touching on the bank relationship side, we're closing a deal next week. It's office, and the lender is a relationship bank. They have done, this will be their 14th deal with this buyer. The buyer is out of state. This will be their first acquisition here in Nevada, and it's based on rate. And the decision to go with this bank is based on rate for the buyer and the flexibility with the loan. So if they want to refinance in 3 years, they have that ability to do so. And we're seeing a lot of the debt that's being placed on assets that we've sold be much shorter term. Even if it's CMBS, it's been 5 years, not 10 years.
Yeah, 3 to 5 year money is really kind of the preferred term right now with flexible prepay.
So the hope being that by that time, rates will have definitely settled and they can refinance at a much lower rate.
Jamie, we have a question for you. Are your clients bullish on Las Vegas, both on the Strip and in the suburbs that you have?
So my practice...
What do they see in 2024, you know, if you give this year a pass?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with Station Casinos. This is another one that's public record on their new Inspirada property, and they're looking to move forward pretty quickly based on timeframes they negotiated with the city of Henderson. I think most of the work that I've done outside of sort of the development space was gaming related. We saw some of those deals sort of fall apart at the end of last year. I can't really go into details on them. But yeah, I mean, most of my client base is in-state. And like I said, this was a really interesting conversation for me because I don't practice in the finance space. And so sort of hearing what's driving the market and how deals get to my desk was very interesting.
Well, thank you, and thank the audience. We have wonderful attendance today, 30-plus tables. Appreciate it.
So, Jamie, you really kept this panel on point. Great job with that. Panelists, you can't get these discussions anywhere else, so great job by the Programs Committee. Marlene has to go to New York, so we're going to let her go. Thank you to Gensler, our sponsor today. And that concludes today's breakfast. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, Marty.